You don't really know who you are. I know that sounds harsh, but hear me out. Most of us live our lives thinking we're in control of our thoughts, our choices, our identities. But according to Carl Jung, there are powerful forces inside you, ancient patterns that silently shape everything you do. You didn't choose them, you inherited them, and until you face them, they'll keep running the show. Carl Jung called these forces archetypes, universal, unconscious blueprints for how we experience the world. They're older than culture, older than your childhood. They've been passed down for generations through myths, religions, dreams, stories. And here's the unsettling truth. Whether you know it or not, one or more of these archetypes is guiding your decisions right now. They show up in how you handle conflict, in what kind of people you're drawn to, in how you deal with failure. They're like invisible lenses you wear over your eyes, coloring everything you see and think you've chosen. If you've ever wondered, why do I keep repeating the same patterns? Or why do I feel stuck being someone I didn't consciously become? This is probably why. Let's break them down. Jung described many archetypes, but 4 of them form the foundation of the human psyche. Think of them like characters in your internal movie. You might recognize yourself in one or in several. The point isn't to label yourself, but to wake up to what's been operating underneath. 1. The hero. The hero is the doer, the fighter, the one who overcomes. The hero lives for the challenge. They want to win, to prove, to rise above. In school, this might look like the straight A student, obsessed with being top of the class. In adulthood, it's the workaholic chasing the next promotion, the entrepreneur burning out on hustle culture, the athlete playing through injury. The hero is admirable, but also exhausting because they're terrified of being weak. They equate rest with failure, vulnerability with defeat. I had a friend in college. His name was Theo. Smart, driven, always on top of everything. But every time something didn't go according to plan, he got a B, or didn't land an internship, he collapsed emotionally. His entire sense of self was tied to being the best. He couldn't admit when he was lost or tired. That's the shadow of the hero, the fear of being human. 2. The sage. The sage seeks truth, clarity, wisdom. They don't want to win, they want to understand. If you're someone who reads endlessly, questions everything, and stays in your head most of the time, you're probably living through the sage. Sages are incredible at seeing the big picture, but their weakness is overthinking. They freeze in indecision. They avoid emotional messiness. They use intellect to escape the body. Think of people like Alan Watts or Marie Curie, brilliant, contemplative, but sometimes distant. I once worked with a therapist who told me something I'll never forget. He said, "There are people who understand their trauma perfectly, but have never truly felt it." That's the sage trap, mistaking knowing for healing. 3. The rebel, also known as the outlaw. The rebel questions everything, destroys to rebuild, refuses to obey. They're the punks, the whistleblowers, the change makers. The rebel can't stand injustice, conformity, or hollow rules. They are the fire starters of history. But there's danger here too. The rebel often doesn't know what to build once they've torn it all down. James Baldwin once wrote, "The paradox of education is precisely this, that as one begins to become conscious, one begins to examine the society in which he is being educated." He was a classic rebel, not just angry, but thoughtful, disruptive in the best way. But many people fall into this archetype without direction. They resist for the sake of resisting. They push people away, sabotage progress, burn bridges they'll later need. 4. The lover. The lover craves connection, emotion, intimacy, beauty. This archetype shows up in artists, romantics, dreamers, even the overly empathetic friend who always puts others first. The lover sees the world through feeling. They are moved by music, overwhelmed by love, paralyzed by heartbreak. They're often at the center of deep relationships, and deep suffering. But the dark side, the lover often loses themselves in others. They confuse being loved with being worthy. They'll stay in toxic relationships just to avoid being alone. I had a client once, a successful young woman, outwardly confident, but she couldn't stop going back to a partner who was emotionally distant and manipulative. "I don't know who I am without him," she said. "That's the shadow of the lover, mistaking attachment for identity." So, which one sounds like you? More importantly, which one is running your life right now? Because here's the truth. These archetypes aren't who you are. They're roles, masks, and the moment you become conscious of them, you take your power back. Imagine you're in a car, you're driving through life, believing you're fully in control, but in the back seat, the hero, the sage, the rebel, the lover. And here's the catch. They've all been whispering directions your whole life. Sometimes they shout, sometimes they fight, sometimes one of them grabs the wheel, and most of the time, you don't even notice. This is what Jung meant when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Integration is about turning around, looking those voices in the eye, and saying, "I see you. I know why you're here, and I'm grateful, but I'm driving now." Because here's the truth. Each archetype has something essential to offer. The hero gives you courage. The sage gives you clarity. The rebel gives you freedom. The lover gives you connection. But none of them alone can lead a whole life. So how do you begin to integrate them? How do you live with awareness, not autopilot? Here are 3 practical personal steps to start today. 1. Ask yourself, when do I feel most triggered? Your dominant archetype often reveals itself when you're under pressure. For example, if you feel panic when things slow down, you might be trapped in hero mode. If deep feelings make you uncomfortable, you might be over-identifying with the sage. Pay attention to where you resist. 2. Invite the others in. If you're always planning, try creating something with no purpose, just beauty. That's the lover's world. If you always seek harmony, try breaking a small rule gently. Let the rebel speak. Your wholeness doesn't come from silencing your dominant archetype. It comes from expanding your range. 3. Make small, conscious shifts. Next time you're about to act on impulse, pause. Ask, who's acting right now? Is it the hero trying to prove, the lover craving validation? Just naming it changes everything. It gives you space to choose differently. And that space, that's where growth lives. Most people never pause long enough to ask, who am I beneath the masks? They keep running, achieving, fixing, performing, loving, resisting, not because they're bad or broken, but because they're afraid of what stillness might reveal. But you've paused. You're listening. That already puts you in rare company, because real growth doesn't come from adding more. It comes from remembering what's already inside you and learning to hold all of it. The hero, the sage, the rebel, the lover, they're not enemies. They're not even opposites. They're parts of the same soul, speaking different languages. You're not here to be perfect. You're here to be whole, and wholeness doesn't mean balance in the clean, Instagrammable sense. It means complexity. It means being able to feel joy and grief at once, to act and rest, to love and let go, to know and not know. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who you were told to be, not who you performed to be, but who you already are, beneath the noise." So the next time you feel pulled to react, to prove, to run, to rebel, to attach, pause, turn inward. Ask yourself, who's speaking right now? And then respond from the deeper place, the place that holds all your voices, but is owned by none of them. That's the self Jung was pointing to, and that's where your real freedom lives.